Hello and welcome to the Center for the Future of Museums Digital Badging Project. I'm Elizabeth Merritt, Founding Director of the Center for the Future of Museums, and in this presentation I'm going to be walking you through your first assignment for Level 1 of the Digital Badging Project, Scanning for Change. And this assignment is about creating your own scanning framework. Scanning is the fancy pants term that futurists use for reading. And futurists need to read widely, eclectically, and omnivorously in order to collect early signals of forces they may be shaping the future. You might already subscribe to Dispatches from the Future of Museums, which is the weekly free e-newsletter where Phil Katz and I share our so-called scanning hits, news items, and bits of information that inform our thinking about trends. In this level, you're going to assemble all the tools you need to do your own scanning, which may be more tightly focused or more tailored to the specifics of your organization or your community than our general high-level scanning is. And the first step in this process is to decide what you want to look for to create your own personal scanning framework, and that's the subject of this assignment. Futures Studies gives us a general framework for scanning called the STEEP categories, and STEEP stands for social trends, technological trends, environmental trends, economics, and politics or policy. But in addition to these general categories, which do provide a well-rounded view of the world, you're going to want to create subcategories and buzzwords, specific things you're looking for when you do your reading. So, for example, within the general category of social and cultural trends, one subcategory you may look at is demographic change, because demographic change is highly important to museums, especially since the demographics of our core visitors is pretty different and vastly diverging from the demographics of the general U.S. population. So, who's living in the U.S., who's going to be living in the U.S., and how do they differ from who's coming in our doors? One buzzword within cultural trends is pop-up culture, and this is the phenomenon of people enjoying the hunt for and consumption of mobile transitory culture, whether it's food trucks or temporary stores popping up in empty storefronts, or whether it's pop-up culture, as you can see in this picture where the National Portrait Gallery of Canada put high-quality reproductions of some of its paintings out on the canals where people could enjoy them while they were skating. Another growing cultural trend we're seeing is the desire to disconnect, the so-called digital detox. People are tired of being tethered to their cell phones and their portable devices. They want to actually have the freedom to lock them up, put them down, turn them off, and interact face-to-face. So that's a trend museums obviously want to pay attention to. Within technological trends, one of the specific trending technologies we're keeping an eye on is 3D printing, also called additive manufacturing. And the really revolutionary thing here is the fact that 3D printing can take any object and through the process of scanning it, turn it into 3D digital data, and then turn that data back into an object. So if you have an object, something from your collections, a new specimen, you can scan it with a camera or a video camera or various specialized forms of scanners like CAT scans or MRIs to create 3D digital data that you then can manipulate and refine and modify and expand or shrink and print it out into an exact copy or into something that you have created based on that original data. And this obviously has huge implications, whether it's somebody wanting to make models or reproductions that people who have limited vision can handle, or it's a conservator wanting to make a model of an object that they can play with when they're making mounts or planning out their conservation. Or it could be an artist wanting to use your data to make their own original work based on an object in your collection. Augmented reality. How many of you have played with augmented reality, which takes digital data and creates images that are laid over what you're actually seeing? This is a picture of somebody using a QR code produced by the Getty Institution to create a augmented reality display on their laptop of a little cabinet that they're able to manipulate and look inside and look over and above and under in a way that they wouldn't be allowed to handle the real thing. Museums are using this for all sorts of cool things. But it's not all about computers. It's also about whole areas of technology such as transportation. So, for example, the technologies that are enabling people to find, reserve, and pay for zip cars, which can contribute to new ways of having high urban density. We also see more and more self-driving cars. So these are all things that are going to affect the transportation patterns that people use to get to museums and how it affects where they live and how we use our resources. Environment. Climate change, huge subcategory under environmental trends, and within that you might look for the term global warming to track information for how we think temperatures are going to rise, or the increase in storm severity, or the rise in sea level. There are whole communities in the U.S. that have to worry within the next 40 or 50 years about the fact that some of their infrastructure may be underwater, including their museums. The obesity crisis. Health is another whole area to look at within the environment, and the obesity crisis in particular is hitting the U.S. very severely. Right now, we have many children, even toddlers, who are already overweight. They're going to grow up at hugely increased risk of developing diabetes and various associated health problems. And museums have to deal with it, both in terms of accommodating our visitors who may have mobility issues and other health issues, and also in terms of it being something we could educate the public about, see how we could help. So, for example, joining the Institute of Museum and Library Services Let's Move Museum and Gardens campaign. Economic trends. Well, we were all hit by the 2008 recession, so we know we have to keep an eye on the U.S. economy, how fast we're recovering, where the money's going, where the money isn't going. We need to look how the economy is affecting subsets of our audiences. So, for example, students. Right now, college students are graduating with an average of $25,000 in debt from their student loans, and over half of them are not finding jobs or are being unemployed within 3 years of graduation. How is that debt going to affect them for the rest of their lives? How is it going to impact their long-term earnings and their ability to give or belong to museums and access our services? When you look at the intersection of technology and the economy, how is technology enabling new forms of money moving about and new forms of philanthropy? Okay, so philanthropy, big subcategory within the economy. One subcategory of philanthropy that's really trending right now is mobile giving. People using their cell phones to make spontaneous donations if they're being invited to, for example, text a donation for earthquake relief, or mobilizing their social networks, Facebook or Twitter, to pool money for a cause. Political policies. Things that are affecting museums include education policy, whether it's No Child Left Behind with an emphasis on standardized core curricula and increased testing, or whether it's cities trying to figure out what they're going to do to make up their budget deficits. So, for example, many cities are saying to nonprofits, even though you don't technically owe us taxes, we would really like to encourage you to pay us voluntary fees in lieu of taxes to cover some of the costs of the services we're providing, like water, sewer, trash collection, emergency services. That's a policy being adopted by many cities that are affecting their local nonprofits. And then there are national policy issues such as laws and regulations regarding cultural property. And within that you might look for the term NAGPRA or the term Nazi-era assets if those are issues of specific concern to your museum. And last but not least, I'm going to add a sixth category to your scanning. In addition to the overall STEEP categories, I'm going to encourage you to look for museum-specific trends. And I'm just going to suggest 3 here to get you started. I've seen a lot of fashion exhibits pop up in the last year, so I'm wondering if fashion exhibits are a small trend or maybe a fad. It's a minor example, but You might also be looking at crowd curation, which is a huge trend influencing museums. How can we invite the public to help us organize and present our content? And that, in turn, is, I guess, a subcategory of the more general trend of participatory engagement, our desire to find ways for the public to get involved, whether it's interacting with exhibits in new ways or interacting with each other or contributing content to what we do. Okay, so what's your specific assignment? You are going to use the worksheet that is provided in the BadgeStaff platform to create your own scanning framework. And in each of these deep categories, I've gotten you started with a few suggestions, the ones I went over in this presentation and a couple of others. And I'm asking you to add 5 subcategories or buzzwords to each of these buckets. So within social and cultural trends, I've pre-populated it with a few things like demographic change and education. You're going to add 5 more. You can keep these ones that I've pre-populated with. If you don't think they're relevant or you're not interested, cross them out, but replace them with something else. Technology, again, I've pre-populated it with a few things I'm watching, like the Internet of Things and 3D printing. You write in 5 more. Environmental trends. I'm looking at a couple of interesting buzzwords like radical urbanism and tactical urbanism that are informing urban design. I'm keeping an eye on climate change and the obesity crisis. Pick 5 more environmental subcategories or buzzwords you're going to keep an eye out for in your reading. Economic trends. I bet you're all going to want to keep an eye on philanthropy. A couple of other things you might want to look at are the creative economy, including creative placemaking and globalization. And pick 5 more. Political and policy. I've just suggested a couple here. Tax policy, like charitable deductions. I know many museums are worried about what's going to be done in our current budget and regulations. Many museums are concerned about cultural property, but think about what other policies are relevant to you. And then museum-specific trends. I've gone ahead and thrown in the 3 I picked out, but I'm really interested here to see what you come up with, because museum-specific trends within museums, is not something that CFM has been focusing on. So that is assignment 1, creating your own personalized scanning framework. Download the worksheet. If you have questions about the assignment, you can use the forum associated with this topic in BadgeStack to ping ideas off your fellow learners. And I look forward to seeing what you upload.